Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So Donald Trump has made America withdraw from the Paris Agreement. What will be its consequences, its implications, and what will be the effect on the global policies of America, and how will the other countries react to this decision? We'll take a look at it, and we'll also take a look at what are the reasons of Donald Trump doing so. So what is Paris Agreement on climate change? It all started from the Rio Summit of 1992, which is also called the Earth Summit of 1992, which was the first very serious attempt by the countries to sign any formal document and to legalize frameworks so that they can work upon climate change. So Rio Summit had three legally binding documents. One was called the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is basically an attempt by the United Nations to control climate change, and it is a legally binding. Second is what you call Convention on Biological Diversity. The purpose of Convention on Biological Diversity was to conserve the biological diversity, which means the variation in the flora and fauna. And the third was the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, which is basically we want to prevent the desertification of our ecosystems. So these were the three legally binding documents that came out of the 1992 Rio Summit, also called Earth Summit. And in under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, all of these countries, they meet. When these countries meet, that is called Conference of Parties. So all the countries that are signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, they meet. That is called COP. So when they met for the 21st time in 2015, that was called COP21. Now please don't get confused between two words. One is called convention and second is called a protocol. Convention is when the countries meet, that is called a convention, as simple as that. Protocol is a legal framework, that is a product of any convention. So before any protocol is reached, is signed, then always there is a convention preceding it, because only when the countries will meet, then only we can expect a protocol or any legal framework. So Paris Agreement was signed by the countries in December 2015 in Paris, and all the biggest polluters, like for example US, China, Russia, India, they are the four biggest polluters. So US, China, they ratified in September 2016, and basically Paris Agreement, as the name says, Paris Agreement on Climate Change. So it has a single-minded focus, which is to prevent climate change, global warming, and the aim is to stop the temperature rising more than 2 degrees. That is the main aim. In fact, the eventual aim is to stop the temperature rising for more than 1.5 degree. But that is till the year 2100. So we are still good 83 years away from that, because it is only 2017. But this is what is used, what you call the end target or the vision. But the achievable target or the practical target which they set is 2 degrees. That is, we will not let the temperature rise by more than 2 degrees. And all the countries, they decided to cut emissions, that is greenhouse gas emission, because it is only the greenhouse gases that are responsible for the increase in the temperature of the atmosphere. Now what are the greenhouse gases? Carbon dioxide, water vapor, chlorofluorocarbon, these all come under the greenhouse gases. And all the countries said that they will reduce their emissions. Now let's come to the issue at hand. America, now Donald Trump, he is from Republican Party, and he has withdrawn America from the Paris Agreement. So it is like history repeating itself, because in 2001, the then American president, the erstwhile American president George W. Bush, he had decided not to ratify the Kyoto Protocol. However, there is a difference. George W. Bush, he did not ratify the Kyoto Protocol, whereas in this case, first Obama ratified the Paris Agreement, and then Donald Trump went back on it. So they are two different things, but it is like history repeating itself, because Kyoto Protocol, it was a predecessor of the Paris Agreement. So Paris Agreement had replaced the Kyoto Protocol, and Donald Trump has said that similar things. Donald Trump has said similar things, like for example, it is unfair to US economy, it will harm US economy, very similar to what George W. Bush had said at that time. That George W. Bush had said that it is unfair and it will harm US economy, it will harm US workers. And another coincidence is that George W. Bush is also from Republican Party. Now America is one of the biggest polluters in the world. Its emissions, carbon dioxide emission I'm talking about, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, so you can also say greenhouse gas emission, although greenhouse gas emission involves other emissions also apart from carbon dioxide. Now carbon dioxide of United States, for example, in 2015 was 5.1 million kilotons. Now if to put this in perspective, European Union has 28 countries, and it is more than the emissions of these 28 countries put together. So US emissions are one of the highest in the world. In fact, the only country which has emissions higher than United States is China. So China had replaced United States in 2007 as the biggest emitter in the world. So Paris Agreement, Obama was very positive about it, and Obama is a Democrat, and he called it a turning point for our planet. So, and all the countries, because it is not easy, to convince so many countries. In fact, one of the criticisms of these conventions and protocols is that so much time is wasted to put all the countries on same page. Because every country has its own problems, every country has its own share of suspicions, doubts. So to make every country sign a document, it is a very long process, and negotiations sometimes run, as long as 10 years. In fact, for Paris Agreement also, the negotiations were for more than 7 years. So now the thing is, since Donald Trump has pulled out of Paris Agreement, the future of Paris Agreement, it now hangs in balance. So we'll analyze exactly that. What is going to happen now? So what is the status so far of Paris Agreement? So there were 197 countries, also called parties, which were present in that convention. Convention is basically a meeting, that's all. And you can also replace the word convention with conference. Sometimes that is acceptable. And 147 countries, they have given their approval or they have ratified the convention. There was a legal framework that 55% of the countries have to sign it, or 55% of the emissions. So, and that has been reached. So now it came into effect. So on 5th of October 2016, the threshold was reached, and it came into force on 4th November 2016. So this is the important date, 4th November 2016, when the Paris Agreement came into effect. And their first conference took place in Morocco at a place called Marrakech from 15th to 18th of November 2016. So as I said, the Paris Agreement, what is the aim of Paris Agreement? It is to limit our rise in global temperature well below 2 degrees Celsius over the pre-industrial times, and also eventual target is 1.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. Now one of the things is, whenever there is any convention and protocol, and we have seen this in Montreal Protocol also, for example. Montreal Protocol was with respect to ozone hole, and we saw that in Montreal Protocol the rules are different for a developed country and a developing country, and this is very important to understand. Like for example, I'll give an example of India and I'll compare it with US. Now US is a developed country, India is a developing country. Now let's say, let's talk about Montreal Protocol. So Montreal Protocol requires us that we will not use the substances which cause a hole in the ozone. Like for example, chlorofluorocarbons, they cause ozone hole. And US can very easily adapt to new technology because it is a developed country. So it can create machines, it can create substances which do not emit chlorofluorocarbon. For example, refrigerator. Now a lot of refrigerators in India, they use chlorofluorocarbon. Now it is not easy for the Indian government to suddenly tell its people stop using refrigerator because it emits chlorofluorocarbon. So it will take some time for India to adopt the technology, and this technology transfer will happen from a developed country to a developing country. Therefore the deadline when you have to stop CFC, it will be more prompt for a developed country. That is, it has to stop using CFCs much earlier than a developing country. So developed countries always get some extra time, they get some leeway. Also the fact that developing countries, their focus is never on environment, their focus is more on economy, because if there is something goes wrong with economy, then these countries can collapse, as we have seen with Greece, for example. So economy is very important for a developing country. Another example I'll give is, for example, Venezuela. It is on the verge of collapse. So anything goes wrong in the economy, the country literally collapses. So that is why the developed country, they also have to give money to the developing country so that they can adopt technology and they can raise awareness And this climate finance is very much essential for any developing country, and it has to be provided by a developed country. So under the Paris Agreement, the developed countries, they had to provide a finance of $100 billion every year. This is, you multiply it by 6,000 crore, so it will become 6 lakh crore rupees. If I take the value of $1 to be 60 rupees. So $100 billion is the amount that the developed countries needed to provide to developing countries by 2020, and this is every year, mind it. And also raise climate finance from a floor of $100 billion from 2025. Now please note that America was also liable to pay the amount of $3 billion every year. The American contribution in this 100 billion was $3 billion. Now 3 billion is 20,000 crore rupees. So that's why Donald Trump was crying foul. He was saying that why should we give $3 billion when America is under so much debt? America is under so much joblessness. We would rather use this money in America to create jobs, to reduce our burden, tax burden. And not only this, America also, commits billions of dollars to United Nations also, climate fund, what is called as green climate fund, so that UN can initiate the, sustainable development initiatives and everything pertaining to climate change. So this was Donald Trump's concern. Now let's focus on Donald Trump's speech, because that will give us a very clear understanding. So Donald Trump said America first. Now again, that was his election promise also. He has a very hardliner kind of approach, very fundamentalist in his approach, and basically he was just playing to the gallery. His voters are the white voters, and he said America first, and he also basically he tries to create an environment of fear in the American masses. So for example, in this case, because Paris Agreement, America was very looking forward to it during Obama's tenure. And Donald Trump said that it will undermine the US economy. Because what will happen is, let's say America accepts Paris Accord. So now America is legally binding. Therefore, America has to reduce its greenhouse gas emission and carbon emission. Therefore, industrialization has to be lower, because industries are a big source of pollution, and therefore it might affect US economy. And if industries, there is anything negative towards industries, it can cost jobs also. And America as such is facing huge joblessness and huge debt. And Donald Trump said that it will weaken American national sovereignty also. And he also said that America is at a disadvantage compared to other countries of the world. In fact, he directly attacked China and India. And I'll tell you what he said about China and what he said about India. These are his words. We don't want other leaders and other countries to be laughing at us. The same nations asking us to stay in the agreement are the countries that have collectively cost America trillions of dollars through tough trade practices, and in many cases lax contributions to our critical military alliance. Now mind it that China and America, they are good trade partners. But just like India and China, the trade is heavily in favor of China. So there is trade imbalance. For example, if I talk about India-China, then we have a trade deficit of $50 billion with China. That is, we import more from China worth $50 billion than we export to China. So this only favors China. Similar is with China-USA. In fact, when Xi Jinping, president of China, met Donald Trump earlier last month, then he discussed this only. Then Donald Trump said to his Chinese counterpart that we have to first make sure that within next few months we have to balance the trade imbalance. So he said that whom are we helping? Countries like India, countries like China, which cost us trillions of dollars. Now again, Donald Trump said that I deeply care about environment, but again this is not true, because he earlier had said just before the American elections in October 2016 that there is nothing called climate change, and climate change is a hoax which is perpetrated by the Chinese. So he just says anything that comes in his mouth, And he said that Paris Accord is very unfair at the highest level to the United States. But what he does not realize is that if America wants to be the leader, then a leader always takes the first step. And the onus lies on the leader to help the developing countries. So America has lost its leadership position. And in fact, if you see various journalists also like Farid Zakaria from CNN, he also said that, America is no more a leader in the world now, because the leader always has to do something extra, and you want to be the leader also and you don't want to contribute funds also, that will not happen. Also, for any such agreements to take place, because we need the cooperation of both the developed and developing countries, so the developed countries have to go that extra mile. Now, he said that it is very unfair. China is given some advantages. Now, let's see what advantages he is talking about. He gave an example, like China will be able to increase these emissions by a staggering number of years, 13. That is, for next 13 years, China can increase these emissions and they can do whatever they want. And look at India. India has said that we will only honor the Paris Agreement if we receive billions and billions of dollars in foreign aid from developed countries. And therefore, India will take advantage of us. So it is very unfair. Those were his words. But again, this is more rhetoric than reality. The truth is that India, because India is the fourth biggest polluter, right? After China, US and Russia. So it is legally binding on India also. And in this year and in the last few years, India has made significant strides. India has taken a lot of effort and made huge progress in the renewable energy or in the alternate sources of energy. He also said that, look at India. India is about to double its coal production by 2020. Think of it. India can double their coal production, whereas we are supposed to get rid of our coal. Even Europe is allowed to continue construction of coal plants. Now again, this is rhetoric. This is not what you call reality. So to give an example of India, India's deadlines are completely different to that of America or developed countries, because India is a developing country. So we suddenly cannot stop producing coal. Now in India, we are still dependent on coal. Maximum electricity is produced in India from thermal power plants, which run on coal. So suddenly, it is not like we realize, okay, coal is a polluter, so let's stop coal. Where we will get electricity from? So we have to make gradual progress. So, and we want more electricity. So we have to double our coal production by 2020. We have to make sure that the coal allocation has to be swift, so that our first endeavor being a developing country is to make sure that electricity reaches every village, and environment comes much later in our list of priorities. And this is true for any developing country. A developing country will always focus first on the economy, on infrastructure. We have very poor infrastructure. So if we start thinking that we cannot build roads because we have to cut a few trees, that is not going to happen. And that is why you see that any progressive government, like the present government, it is giving a lot of environmental clearances. And in the last 3 years, there have been more environmental clearances than in the last 20 years. So that is because of the policies of the government. If it wants a strong economy, it has to take these steps. Now let me come to India. He was shouting again and again, India, India, India. Is India really a culprit? No, it is not actually, because it is a developing country and India has very ambitious emission reduction targets. So it is not like India is saying we will not reduce our emission target, but we will do it in a slow and gradual manner, in a phased out manner. So for example, India wants to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 compared to the 2005 level. So whatever were India's emission in 2005, it has to reduce its emissions by 33 to 35% by 2030. And India wants to achieve 40% of its electricity, that is around 350 gigawatt installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy sources, mainly renewable sources like solar, like wind, etc. So India has set very ambitious target for itself. And it is not just the talk. India has actually walked the walk. So for example, solar prices, if I talk about the unit price for solar, it has been sharply decreasing in India because lot of solar plants are being built in Tamil Nadu, in Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan, in lot of states. So India is making significant effort in solar energy, and India will overtake Japan in 2017, this year only. Now, to give some numbers to it, Bhadla plant, which is in Rajasthan, huge plant, 2500 megawatt plant, solar plant. The solar power tariffs, they have fallen to as low as 2.62 per unit. And in the second auction, they fell to even lesser, 2.44 rupees per unit. And if you compare it with coal, it is even lesser than coal. For example, NTPC sells electricity at 3.20. And you can see that at Bhadla, the solar prices were lower than the traditional or conventional sources of electricity. So this is a significant achievement for India. And also, India has set a very ambitious target. Like for example, by 2027, the renewable sources of energy in India will cover more than half of the energy demand of India. So that is an ambitious target for India. In fact, let me give you a very important data. In 2016-2017, that is financial year 2017, from 1st April 2016 to 31st March 2017, the year that has just ended, financial year that has just ended, India has installed 11.3 gigawatt worth of new renewable energy capacity and only 11.5 gigawatt of thermal capacity, which is coal run basically, which is conventional way. So you can see it is neck to neck. The thermal capacity is at par, almost equal to that of the new renewable energy capacity. And in the May 2017 alone, 13.7 gigawatt of non-renewable capacity was removed by India. So all these facts were conveniently ignored by Donald Trump. He just went after the coal-fired capacity of India, that India will double its coal production by 2020. So again, he was just cherry picking on the data that suits him. That's all. Now, under the Paris Agreement, the United States had committed to reduce its emissions by 26 to 28% from the 2005 levels by 2025. So this was the commitment that they had made. Also, they had committed $3 billion every year that they will give to the developing countries. Now, Donald Trump gives billions of dollars, for example, aid to Pakistan for countering Afghanistan every year. This does not hurt him, but $3 billion every year will hurt him. This is called politics of convenience. And basically, he is looking at the next elections, which will be in America. Now, America, as you know, it is the second biggest polluter. First biggest polluter is China, and then it is America. America accounts for around 15% of the total greenhouse gas emission. China is around 20%, and Russia is around 6%. India is around 4%. Now, how it is a political move by Donald Trump? So, Donald Trump has a very fundamentalist approach, very hardline approach, and very nationalistic approach, so to say. So, November 2020, we will have the elections. Now, there is a rule that if you join the Paris Climate Agreement and if you want to move out, you cannot do it for 3 years. And you also have to wait 1 more year. So, October 2016, American elections were there, and America's president is elected for a tenure of 4 years. So, after 4 years, that is October 2020, elections will be there. So, if America announces today that it is moving out, it will move out by November 2020. That will be the election time, and so this will be a very hot topic of debate. And during that time, Donald Trump can say to American people that, look, I have saved so much money, I have created so many jobs because we pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and therefore our industrial production did not get affected because we are not binding now. We can pollute the environment in whatever capacity we want. So basically, our industrial production did not decline, our industries did not have to be shut down, and things like that. He can make this his election rhetoric. Now, another thing is that Donald Trump also said that United States is contributing billions of dollars to United Nations Green Climate Fund, and it is costing United States a fortune. Now, again, this is not true. For example, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Yemen, the war in Iraq, all this is costing America trillions of dollars, not just billions of dollars. This is costing America more, and this is all, as I said, it's just rhetoric, to just playing to the gallery, playing to your voters, that's all. And also Donald Trump he attended G7 countries meeting. All the powerful countries are there in G7, and this meeting was just last week in Italy, in Sicily, and all the other six head of states, they tried to convince Donald Trump to not pull out of the Paris Agreement, but he did not listen to anyone. In fact, the Pope also said, Donald Trump recently met the Pope Francis, and again, he did not listen to him also. Now, what is the reaction of the world leaders regarding this? So this is a positive sign that it's not like that America has pulled out, so suddenly China is also saying, I will also pull out. In fact, most of the head of states, most of the executive heads of the countries, they have said that we will honor Paris Agreement. They have said so in unison. For example, Angela Merkel, German Chancellor, French President, who is a new elected president from En Marche Party, Emmanuel Macron, and Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni, they said in a joint statement that they will do whatever possible to honor the Paris Agreement and combat climate change. And they also told developing countries to have patience, and they said that we will help all the developing countries in the best capacity as possible. Now, Canada Prime Minister, Canada is one of the most strongest allies of America. So Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that he is very sad about Donald Trump's decision, but he wants to honor the agreement. Again, China called it a global setback. So China will try its best to malign the image of America at the global level because of this. And again, now the thing is that apart from, I told you 197 countries are a party to the convention. So there are only, apart from America now, America is pulled out. Now there are only 2 more countries which are not a party to it, Syria and Nicaragua. And their reasons are very, very different for not being a part of the Paris Agreement. For example, Syria, there is a civil war going on. So they cannot guarantee anything basically. So Syria, there is a war going on, and again, US is directly involved in Syria. It wants to overthrow the Assad establishment, but Assad establishment is supported by Russia. So there is a proxy war going on in Syria for the last 5 years. And Nicaragua is also not a member. Nicaragua has very different reasons. Nicaragua wanted the Paris Agreement to be even more strict, more stringent. But again, so Nicaragua wants to be environment friendly, and Paris Agreement was underwhelming for Nicaragua. So it said, I don't want to be a part of it. Now, the United States will join the company of Syria and Nicaragua, so it will get globally isolated in some ways. And Antonio Guterres, who is the United Nations Secretary General, his office has said that it is a major disappointment. So everybody is unhappy at the global level. Even Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said it is very, very sad, very disappointing. And one more thing, Donald Trump said that we will either pull out completely or you have to renegotiate with us and you have to give us a more fair deal. But again, United Nations has made it very, very clear that already so much time has been wasted on negotiations. More than 7 years have been wasted, and it is impossible. The agreement cannot be renegotiated. In fact, all the countries, Germany, France, Italy, they all said we are not ready to renegotiate. And it will take 4 years. I told you about the political move. It will take 4 years for America to pull out, even if they start today. So it will take 4 years, and that will be the election time in America. So this is a political move. And even the American businessmen, the American industry is not supporting Donald Trump. For example, Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Walt Disney CEO Robert Iger, they have even resigned from the advisory council of the White House. And Elon Musk even tweeted, he said climate change is real, leaving Paris is not good for America or the world. And CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, he has also said he is very sad, and General Electric CEO also said he is very disappointed. Now, what will be the consequences of this? You can see it in a positive light also and a negative light also. Like for example, America is not there. So what will China say now? China and other powerful countries, they can also say that we will also move out. And therefore this, if China and America both move out, 2 biggest polluters move out, then it will be just a hogwash. This agreement will not work. But the people are saying that China will not do like that. In fact, the sentiments are positive. China will rather see it as an opportunity to gain a leadership position among the remaining countries of the world. Because right now, because of this Donald Trump decision, many of the countries of the world are unhappy with him. This leadership vacuum can be easily, this can be filled by, the vacuum can be filled by China. And China can take the premier position in leadership. Also, Donald Trump is facing backlash from within also. So a lot of US states, because US is a very strong federal structure, so they don't have to agree to any central policy. They are very, very strong federal structure. So a lot of states like Austin, Texas, Chicago, these are not small states. These are very, very powerful states. In fact, if you take into account all of these states combined, then they form the world's 5th largest economy. Even California, it in itself forms the 6th largest economy in the world. So they are not agreeing with Donald Trump, and the sentiment against Donald Trump will increase in America. Now, COP23. COP21 was the Paris Agreement, COP22 happened in Morocco, and COP23 will take place in Germany in Bonn in November 2017. And the president of this will be Fijian Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama. He will be the president. And again, Fiji is right there in the ocean. It is a part of the Oceania. So therefore, if climate change happens, then the first countries to become extinct will be these island countries like Fiji, for example, because they are right there in the ocean. So the ocean water will increase and the level of ocean will increase. So thereby drowning these completely. So they are at much more trouble than the countries like India and Africa, which are relatively away. Even the South India is very, very vulnerable to any rise in the ocean level of water. And also at COP23, we can expect some anti-United States of America sentiments. This meeting is in November 2017 because practically nobody is happy. Only the Trump voters are happy with this decision as far as the reports are concerned till now. Now, there is one more thing, that these conventions and protocol, they face a lot of criticism because we have seen that Rio Summit, it did not result into anything. There was nothing that was achieved by Rio Summit of 1992. And when they met again after 5 years, that is called Rio Plus 5. They met in New York. Again, nothing was done. And they met again after 10 years, which is called Rio Plus 10. This time they met in Johannesburg, South Africa. Again, nothing was done. And this was announced by the respective secretary generals of that time of United Nations that we have not achieved anything. It's only words. And so basically the countries meet and they say a lot of things that we are committed and we are this and that. But ultimately on ground, nothing is done. And out of all the conventions and protocols, most have failed. So for example, when this country met after 20 years, that is called Rio Plus 20, again at Rio in Brazil, they said nothing has been achieved. That time the UN Secretary General was Kofi Annan, and he said our words have not been met by our actions, have not been met by our words. And that is one of the criticism of these conventions and protocols. In fact, the only protocol that has done some good is the Montreal Protocol. Even Kyoto Protocol was a big failure because the carbon emission has just kept on increasing. That's it. And Montreal Protocol is said to be a little bit of success because the ozone hole got filled up partially. So it's business as usual. If America is there, doesn't matter. If America is not there, doesn't matter. Some people look at it that way also. Also, the fact that a powerful country never gets affected if it breaches any legal framework. We have seen it time and again. For example, last year. Now, Philippines dragged China to court, International Court of Justice, and International Court of Justice said to China in its verdict that you don't have any right over South China Sea by your historical references. So China said we will not honor this judgment. So again, the powerful countries never get affected because of these conventions and protocols, legal frameworks. So all this is going on. So I want to know what is your opinion regarding this. What effect it will have on the global scenario, how will other countries react to it, and what will be the long-term implications of it. Whatever your comments, you can write down, and I will make sure that I read each and every comment and I will give my feedback also. Thanks for watching.